Welcome to the MyTech Toolbelt podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Brenda. And this is a podcast where we highlight educators who innovate, engage, and inspire through the use of technology. Thank you so much for joining us today for episode 35 of the MyTech Toolbelt podcast. Luis Perez, who joined us in episode 31, is the Technical Assistance Specialist for the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials. Luis joins us again to speak with us about the tools you can add to your tech tool belt for accessibility. In this episode, Luis shares accessibility settings, various programs, and a multitude of apps that are currently available to you. In case you missed episode 31, Luis spoke to us about Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. So if you missed that, we encourage you to go back and listen to that episode as well. So, without further ado, our interview with Luis Perez.
We are super excited to welcome Luis Perez once again to the MyTech Toolbelt podcast in another episode where he is going to be talking to us about his book, Learning on the Go, How to Personalize Education with using different types of technology, iPads, Chromebooks, and Microsoft. So, Luis, thank you for joining us again.
Yes, very exciting to get together one more time with you. This is awesome.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be with you both today.
So we have already interviewed Luis once before. So Luis, could you maybe remind everybody again for your background and what it is that you specialize in?
Sure, absolutely. So I currently work as a technical assistance specialist at the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials. We just call it the AIM Center for short, because that rolls off the tongue a little bit easier. And the National AIM Center is a federally funded technical assistance center. It's funded by the Office of Special Educational Programs at the U.S. Department of Education. But we are housed at CAST. And CAST is the nonprofit that has done a lot of the development around the Universal Design for Learning framework. So our center, the National AIM Center, looks at the accessibility of educational materials and technologies, and how when we make materials accessible, it really provides greater learning opportunities and better outcomes for students with disabilities. But since we are housed at CAST, we also focus on accessibility as sort of the foundation for universal design for learning. And so when you make things accessible, then you provide, additional opportunities for other learners to benefit as well.
All learners, really.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what's so cool. And so for listeners who may not be familiar with the concept of universal design for learning, we have new teachers that listen to our podcast, teachers that aren't necessarily people going through credentialing programs. So can you tell us a little bit about UDL and what that means when it comes to education?
Sure. So universal design for learning, the first part of it, the universal design part, really began with a movement to make the built environment accessible. And a lot of people are already familiar with that just from walking around, for instance, and going to any kind of public space where there are automatic doors, there's elevators, there may be a TV with captions on, like when you go to the airport and the captions are on. So those are all great examples of universal design in the built environment, because they make it possible for all kinds of people to have access to the information and have access to the same interactions. So universal design for learning kind of takes that same idea of, what's essential for one group is really helpful for everybody, and applies that to the curriculum. So instead of taking a one-size-fits-all approach to the curriculum, the idea is to kind of make the curriculum more flexible so that different types of learners can find different entry points into learning. So there's three key principles of UDL: multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and then multiple means of action and expression. So basically, the idea is that we all vary. So in any classroom, before we even know who our specific learners are going to be, we can expect that there's going to be a great deal of variability. And so we need to provide options for how we engage learners, how we present information to them, and then how we allow them to respond and show their understanding. So really, UDL is all about learner variability and then matching that variability with a flexible curriculum.
Thank you for that overview. So let's dive into this book. When did you write this book?
Learning on the Go just came out earlier this year from CAST. I started writing it before I actually joined CAST. So it's really strange. I'm writing a book, and then I find myself working for the organization that I contracted to do the book for. But it all worked out in a great way because, I'm really passionate about UDL. I'm really passionate about accessibility. And so it was great that I ended up working for a center that's housed at CAS. So the idea behind this book, it's part of a series that CAS has called the Skinny Book series. And so the tagline is just give me the skinny.
That's all teachers have time for, right? Just give me the skinny. Break it down for me quick.
That's exactly what we were going for. So the idea is, if you pick up this book, you may have heard of UDL. You may have a general understanding that it's all about flexibility, but what you need some help with is the next step, right? The how. And specifically in this book, what I look at is how technology helps in providing options. You can do UDL, you can practice UDL, so it's a better way to put it, without technology. You can provide options using analog means and so on, or you can rearrange your classroom, or you can provide different options for how learners express their understanding. But I always say that technology just gives you even more options. And then for some learners, there is no UDL without technology because they have very specific needs. And without us providing that accessibility, then basically they're not able to enter into learning, right? So that's really where I start from, is kind of building on accessibility as a foundation and then looking at other options for how learners can not only have options, but also gain a voice as learners so that then in the future they can advocate for themselves. My goal with this book is how do we use technology to empower learners so that they become citizens who have a voice, who can express their goals and their aspirations and be active citizens in a democracy, right? So part of that is media literacy, which is so important given the political times that we live in. And so you don't have to just listen to the news. You can analyze the news. You can interpret the news. And then you can make meaning of it for yourself. So I think UDL it's about that as well. It's about empowering what we call expert learners. And part of that expertise is, how do you live in a democracy as an active, critical thinker?
That is cool. So I'm reading kind of through the website where you've got the book posted on the CAS website, and the subtitle of the book is How to Personalize Education with the iPad. And you were kind of saying like that for some students, personalization, UDL access to information is almost impossible without technology. But the iPad is not the only piece. It just happens to be a part of this book. But as we have talked about in our previous session, the Chromebooks and Microsoft devices also have accessibility features. This book kind of focuses a little bit more on the iPad.
Yeah, it does. But, that's just the starting point. The reason why I selected the iPad is, in my opinion, and this is from my own personal experience as a person with a disability, it has the most robust accessibility stack. And by that, I mean starting all the way from somebody who can't see the screen at all to somebody who just needs a little bit of support to be able to read and process the information that's displayed on the screen. In addition to that, another reason for me selecting the iPad is the whole set of creative apps that are out there. And then the portability and the fact that now you have a device where you can take it out into the real world and really engage in some authentic learning experiences, whether that's interviewing somebody in the community, that's collecting some data, out in the world about challenges that we face, like voting or resources, or if you're in California, and I know you're probably very sensitive to this, the issue of, forest fires and not only what causes them, but what's the aftermath and, how do we deal with what happens next? Like, how do we relocate people? How do we make sure that these things don't happen again? So again, we can set out students to go interview first responders, go interview the people that have survived the fires. And I think that really provides a hook for a more authentic education. So that's part of UDL as well. It's finding that engagement, right, with real problems that really matter to learners. So they're not learning in isolation from a textbook. They're not learning out of context, but learning is really situated when you have a portable device. So even though the book says in the tagline it focuses on the iPad, a lot of what you'll learn you could apply with an Android tablet. a lot of these apps sometimes are cross-platform. So there may be an iPad version of it, but there may also be an Android version or even a Chromebook version in some cases. So what's important is, just really having options yourself as an educator. So use the iPad if that's what you have, or use Chromebooks. And I give you options in the book. So if you want to look at what this part of the book looks like on a Chromebook, then that's available to you as well. And then lately, I've been exploring a lot more with Microsoft because of their learning tools, which I think are a great option. Even if you're not in a Windows environment, you can still use those learning tools on a Mac or an iOS. So Microsoft is a little bit more sort of a cross-platforms, if you will, in their current incarnation. So it's really about having an extensive toolkit, because that will give you the most flexibility for, again, you don't know who your learners are going to be. So more options, the better.
Well, and I think what you've kind of said is that it doesn't matter what the device is, there's going to be opportunities to use the accessibility features so that all learners, regardless of whether they've been identified as a learner with a specific need or not, has the opportunity to really access the material in a way that is very personalized to them. And one of the other things that just really makes me excited about this type of learning is that I don't have to draw a lot of attention to myself because I need the text a little bit bigger because I can't see very well, or that I need to listen because for me, auditory processing is easier than visual processing. So, but I don't need to advertise that with these devices. My iPad has made such a customizable experience that to use someone else's iPad is like, I don't know where anything is. I can't see the text very well, or, and I'm like, well, can we just use my iPad? Because then I can see and do things the way I need to do them. So
sure.
I think that's what's really cool, is that we're not highlighting someone's disability. We're highlighting accessibility.
Sure. Well, absolutely. I mean, with a screen reader, for instance, you can pick up an iPad and be sitting on the subway if you have trains where you live. I don't, because I live in Florida, but we do have buses, right? So, or on a plane, you can turn on that screen reader and put on your headphones, and everybody just thinks you're listening to music, but you could be listening to an entire book, or you could be listening to the news being read out loud from a newspaper site or a blog or whatever. So that's really important, because reducing that stigma is important. It makes it easier for people to, not go without just because they don't feel like standing out. So I think that's really important when we look at technology, and we look at UDL as well, is considering the emotional component, that getting people to adopt technology just because it benefits them, right? Sometimes there's more to it than that. They need to see it as something that they can use with ease and in an equally integrated way, so that they're not sort of being singled out. So this book really started out, there's a framework that I've always used when I look at technology integration. It's called the ABLE framework.
Okay.
So this is a heuristic that I developed for myself in thinking about technology integration. So the A is for access to content and tools. Then the B is for built-in supports for variability. The L is for leveraging multimedia. And then the E is for expression and creativity. So as you can see, it starts with really good foundation in accessibility, right? So making sure that if you do need a screen reader, you can turn on a voiceover on an iPad, or if you're on an Android device, you can turn on TalkBack. They're very similar in functionality. And in fact, if you learn one, it's not going to take you much to kind of use the other one as well. Or if you need switch access. So if you're a learner that has motor difficulties, something like cerebral palsy, and you can't perform those gestures on your tablet, well, you can have software do that for you, flip the pages or advance to the next screen using switch devices, where in the most basic form, a switch is just a big button where there's a cursor moving around on the screen, and when it gets to the option that you want to interact with, you'll press the button.
Got it.
So it's a very sort of basic way of accessing a touch screen. But again, it's the difference between somebody not being able to complete their assignments, not being able to participate in their education, and being able to do so. So I have a whole chapter on sort of those built-in accessibility options, beginning with the more specialized tools, and then moving into things that are just benefit everybody because they're universal design. So that includes captions. So being able to turn on the captions or display settings, being able to reverse the colors, make the text bigger, make it bold, add some highlighting around it. That doesn't just benefit learners who have low vision. That benefits everybody, because when we're on the go, at any point, we may be disadvantaged by the fact that the lighting is not great,
Right.
sound is not great. So there are situational disabilities that we can all experience at one time or another. So I think the move to mobile learning really has sort of provided a big push for making things more accessible and making sure that they're universally designed and work for everybody. So that's sort of the foundation. That's that A for access to content and tools. But then, we move into sort of the built-in supports for variability, which again is supports for reading, writing, math, and executive functioning. And executive functioning, for those who are listening and don't know what it is, that's our ability to get things done with a purpose. So it's how our learners sort of create a plan, then execute that plan, and then self-monitor to make sure that they can, make adjustments on the go. So if something's not working, they don't just insist on trying to do it the same way, but they're flexible enough to change strategies until they accomplish their goal. Executive functioning is something that is vital to developing learners if they're going to move on from K-12 into college and the career and the workforce, because there you have to, you have to stay on a schedule, and you have to sort of be able to get things done according to the needs of a job and so on. And especially nowadays, a lot of jobs are sort of more open in the sense that like me, I work remotely and I set my own schedule. So it's important when you're lacking those structures, if you don't have those really good executive functioning skills, then it's easy to get lost.
Luis, let's talk about that for a minute, because I'll tell you that I've worked in K-12 education and now I'm in higher education. And honestly, up until the point where I started working with kind of a special ed education team, I didn't hear a lot about educators in traditional K-12 settings, whether they were, push in or pull out or anything like that, really talk about executive functioning education, like teaching our kids. And I'm thinking about just to my own kids, and you can probably, we can all think about our own kids, is like, those are kind of things that I don't want to say take for granted, but like maybe are typically taught, a lot of it is typically taught in home. And then in education, I haven't been seeing it until I stepped into the special ed world, where they were really like, we have to get these kids like to learn about these scheduling systems. But I almost think that's a shame that we're not doing a little bit more of that in kind of our traditional education space.
Absolutely.
Because I know that I probably would have benefited a little bit more had someone just kind of helped me get a little more organized.
Right,
and
absolutely.
I just heard that speech of the keynote speaker at the college that was like, make your bed every day, because then you start your day off of accomplishing something. And I think that's almost one of those executive functioning skills of like, if you've accomplished that first thing, the next thing becomes easier and easier, and it helps you just kind of get through your day. But what is your experience in that? Because I think we typically talk about that only when it comes to special ed folks, and in actuality, no, like
it's everyone.
Everyone needs to learn how to use a calendar,
right?
Well, and I completely agree with you 100% that this is a skill that every student needs, especially as I said, as the world of work changes, and people are working more independently. People are consultants, or they may have several roles at the same time, just because of the way that work is these days. It requires a lot more flexibility. So I think it's a skill we need to build on, for every learner, and it is part of that learning expertise that we seek to develop with Universal Design for Learning. I think we have a lot of thanks to give to the disability community, because this wasn't on the radar until, in the 1980s and 90s. The parents of kids with invisible disabilities or hidden disabilities, like ADHD, like learning disabilities, kind of started making some noise about it.
Right.
And sometimes that's what it takes, is parents and advocating for their kids and sort of raising awareness about these things. And so now we know that it's not just people with disabilities who can benefit from this, because our world is getting faster. And the demands on our time and the demands on our schedules, are becoming greater. So we can all benefit. I use a strategy, there's a strategy that helped me get my dissertation done, which is the Pomodoro technique.
Oh, what's that?
And so with the Pomodoro technique, it's essentially like interval work. So you'll set up, say, 4 intervals where you'll work for 25 minutes, take a break for 5 minutes. You'll work for 25 minutes and you'll do 3 or 4 of those, and then you take a longer break. And so there's a number of apps on my Chromebook or on my Chrome browser. I use an extension called Marinara. So Pomodoro, the name of the technique comes from the fact that the timer that people used originally was shaped like a tomato.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's a tomato timer.
Okay.
And so people have kind of continued with that theme. And so Marinara is a timer app or extension that you can use. And it just helps you with, spacing out whatever it is that you're doing, and also sort of giving you these chunks of time where you're just more focused.
Right. And I can see that even in a work environment, keeping on task, not checking your emails every time a new email comes in, right? And checking your Twitter, and just like you need to stay focused for 20 minutes and then.
Actually, it's really hard.
It is hard, but I like this Pomodoro, I think would work well for anyone.
It could, yeah. But I think we have created a generation of
shiny object.
Yeah, ooh, there was a ding or a buzz or my
Right,
watch or my and then all of a sudden I need to see kind of what that is. Whereas, I think before mobile devices and before this kind of immediate access, we were less distracted.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think that's absolutely a great way to kind of keep us. It is really hard though. Like, I mean,
you're preaching to the choir.
I know.
Well, it's like meditation, right? When you first start doing it, you're like, how am I going to get through an hour?
Right.
But these are skills, right? So like any skill, you can build it up over time. So I think the first step is sort of controlling your information diet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So whenever I install an app on whatever device I'm on, the first thing I do is go into the notifications and I decide, do I really need that notification? Because it's nice to get that, what they call a dopamine hit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So whenever you hear that ding or you see that pop up, that's training your body to kind of get that rush of, dopamine. And so it is easy to get addicted to that. So making sure that you go into the notifications and, just control what you get, what notifications you get. But then also using these techniques like the Pomodoro, over time, it gets easier. You train yourself to be able to focus for even longer time. So for instance, the 25 minutes did not work for me for writing my dissertation. But I took the idea and then I made it 50 and 10.
Okay.
Right.
Because with writing, it took me a while to just kind of come around to, this is what I want to write. So I would stare at the screen for a little bit.
Sure.
And then I would get started writing. So, these simple techniques like that can really help us with building these executive functioning skills. There are apps, calendar apps. I use the built-in reminders on my iOS device. I also use an app called Due, D-U-E.
Okay.
And what's nice about Due is that it keeps nagging you. So it's got a nag feature. It's easy when you see a notification pop up for something important to just say, okay, dismiss it, and then out of mind, out of sight, and you forget about it. But with Due, you can set it up so that it will keep coming around every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes until you go in and you intentionally kind of turn it off. So it's great for something important, like you have a test coming up and you want to make sure that you don't miss it, something like that, or, and whatever it is that you really need to be reminded of. There's lots of options out there for calendars, reminders, to-do managers, note-taking apps, because what we're finding out is that, our working memory, our ability to sort of stay engaged is not infinite.
And it's getting worse.
It is.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like running, right? You can't sprint forever.
No.
At some point, your muscles get tired and you sort of have to take a breather. Well, memory works the same way. So if you have apps where you can take notes, so some of my favorites are Google Keep. I use Google Keep across platforms. It's free. It's really nice application of UDL because you can take a picture, you can record, you can write it, handwriting, it can recognize the handwriting. So there's lots of options for how you take down that information so it doesn't get lost. But also, if I forget my device, I can go to a different device and just log into my Google Keep account
Right.
and access it on there. And then OneNote from Microsoft. And I use the extension, the OneNote Web Clipper on Chrome. And so that allows me to save websites and save notes and things on the web that I come across. And so then I can access it from any device. Those are just some examples of that executive functioning and building that up as a foundation for learning.
That's funny that those would be my top two as well. Brenda and I use Google Keep a lot because we can share notes. And I actually, when I work with some of the schools, specifically some of the special ed departments, and I say, oh, you guys can make a template as a teacher and then share that blank template with a student who could then, this is specifically with executive functioning, right? They create these series of checkboxes that the student needs to do. It's a shared keep, and the teacher can see exactly where that student is at every day, at every point of their day. And so I love Google Keep. And then OneNote has been, that's just my go-to for almost everything. My third would be Evernote. And I like Evernote too. A little worried about kind of the stability of its future at this point. But
that's funny you mentioned that, because I was worried about them too. So slowly I moved onto OneNote. Yeah.
And I like the difference between, like, people would always ask me, what's the difference between Evernote and OneNote? And for me, I love Evernote because it does have notebooks and I can stack them and all those kinds of things. But for me, I put a lot of, like, my personal life lives in Evernote. If I think I said Evernote. Evernote is where my personal life lives, and I have notebooks for all of, car repairs and things, and just like recipe books and things like that live there. But my OneNote really functions like a notebook. Remember the ones that we would get in school, the 5-section notebooks, and it's really thick, and I can have different sections in it, but I have one notebook with all these different sections in it, with all these different pages in it, and I can color code things, and I can import audios and videos and Word documents and PDFs, and it's so much more robust than Evernote. Evernote is just a place where I like to keep everything, and it's extremely good at that, at what it does and what I use it for. But OneNote can be used in education in the fact that I can have a shared notebook with a student, and I can have a shared notebook with my whole class, and I can collect homework in it and things like that. It just really is a very robust tool and for note keeping. So I have my work life kind of lives in OneNote by Microsoft.
Well, I'll tell you what really sort of was the tipping point for me in moving from Evernote to OneNote is really the learning tools. Mm-hmm. So learning tools is sort of a component that Microsoft is building into OneNote over time, but it gives you a really, really nice text-to-speech option with highlighting. And so that can help students with dyslexia and other learning difficulties to be able to sort of decode the text. And but also it can help other learners focus on what they're reading so they can follow along with that highlighting. It has things like masking feature where you can sort of bring up a mask over part of the screen so that only a few lines of text are visible at a time. Lots of display options. You can invert the colors. You can add color filters. And again, that can be helpful for some learning disabilities. You can show the different parts of speech in different colors or with labels on top of them. And then lately, they've also added the ability to turn on picture dictionary.
Wow.
So when you click on a word, you can not only hear it read out loud, but you can also see a symbol that corresponds to it. So if you have students with, autism or that just need that pictorial support or reinforcement, then you can bring up those symbols as part of the dictionary. So it's a really powerful tool, and it's built right into not just OneNote, but Microsoft Word, the Edge web browser if you're on Windows, and they call it Reading View there. So that's the one thing that I would pick on Microsoft for is we need to make those features more consistent across different options, because that really helps learners when they learn it in one place and then the name changes. They're like, oh, what is this? Well, it's the same functionality. It's just a different name. So I'm a big fan of OneNote just because of the learning tools. But again, I use those, Microsoft Word, because I spent a lot of time developing Word documents and so on. The other feature that I really like, or the other application or tool, is Read and Write for Google Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
I use that quite a bit. And again, it's a very robust suite of different tools in one place. So you get text to speech, you get highlighting, you have the ability to save those highlights into a separate document so you can use them for review. You can simplify the text. So if you want to kind of remove all of the clutter and then see a simplified view. And again, you can combine some of these options. So you can simplify the text and then turn on the text to speech. So Read and Write it's a really great option. And if you're a teacher, you can actually get it for free. You can go on the Text Help website and sort of fill out a form with your email address, your valid email address for teaching. And then you can get an account for Read and Write for Google.
That's great.
Great hint there.
That's a good hint. I didn't know that hint, and I've been sharing Read and Write with a bunch of our teachers. So I'm gonna backpedal a little bit and send out a new email. That's fantastic, because I had the test version of that, and I really like where you get 14 days with the free full version.
Right.
And I just thought it was so fantastic. But then it defaulted me back to the free version, and so
and you get some options with the free version. The text to speech remains free, and some of the options remain free. But if you're a teacher, you can try out the full version, with that educator email. So just go on the Text Help website and do a search for that, and it'll give you one more option that you can use.
That's fantastic. And I have been encouraging schools and districts to really look at that, buying that as a site-wide Chrome deployment, because I think that, again, it's one of those tools that is not, is for all learners, myself included. I mean, I've used it to where I need something read to me because I need to be doing something else, just in a multitasking, or I want to hear something that I've written read back to me because I have to proofread my own.
Yeah, you can look at your own words and gloss over the errors because you've seen it so many times.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it just kind of gives you an idea of the flow of your writing too, just to when you listen to it read back out loud to you. And these text-to-speech voices are really getting quite good. They're, they don't sound like this so much anymore. So they've got a little bit, where they have a better flow. And like, for instance, the voice on iOS called Alex actually takes a breath every once in a while.
Oh, that's cool. I prefer all of my voices to be some type of a British person, just because I think that's I just think that's funny.
See, you like the British voice. I like the Australian voice.
Yeah, but I enjoy the fact that we are coming so far in technology that we even have those options. Back when it was Dragon, wasn't it Dragon Dictation? I mean, that was really a $600 program that we had to buy back in the day, and now we're downloading free apps in the Chrome store.
What's really interesting is that Nuance has cut back on Dragon because the built-in free options are so good.
Right.
That it's kind of cutting into their market for these more specialized tools. So I would tell everybody, regardless of the device you have, going to and I hate that they're called accessibility options. I think they should really be called personalization features.
Good idea. I like that.
And so that's why the title of my name is How to Personalize Education, because it's all about going in and just like you adjust, your screensaver, which that just means I just dated myself because nobody uses the screensaver anymore. So your background.
Your background, okay.
So you adjust your background, you adjust the dock or the system tray, whatever it is, you customize it. Like you said, if somebody picks up your computer or your device, they're like right away, that's somebody else's device. It's not mine. So I would encourage everybody, go into settings and take a look at, specifically text-to-speech. Almost all of these platforms now have a built-in text-to-speech with really nice voices and options for turning on highlighting and so on. And then also explore the opposite, speech-to-text. And so you can do that. Microsoft has dictation now, just like iOS does, and you can use Google Voice Typing and Google Docs. I use that all the time, and it's pretty powerful because not only are you using your voice to type, but you can also do some formatting, some selection. So, select the word brown and change it to blue and so on. So if you do a search for Google voice typing, you can find out all the commands, and that can be really, it's not just an accessibility feature, it's a convenience feature.
Right.
So it allows you to enter text when your hands are busy or you're trying to look for a citation in a book or something like that. So definitely text to speech, and the opposite, speech to text. It's just providing more options for how you, again, get that information, and then how you express what you know if you're doing it in writing. There's an app that I also like, going back to the executive functioning, and it's the idea of concept mapping before you sit down to write. And so I have a couple of apps that I personally use. One is Onenote.
Okay.
That's Node. The reason why I use that one over others is that on any of the nodes, you can set them up as a checklist.
Wow. Okay.
So basically, you can set up that, a branch or a node, and just select it to be a checklist. And then as you complete the options within that branch, it gives you an indicator that tracks your progress. So it has that executive functioning, in addition to the fact that visually you can plan an essay, you can plan a talk. So generally when I'm doing a talk, because I'm still a speaker, I go out and present all of the time. I will use a mind mapping app first, because it gives me a different way of looking at the information. And it can also be helpful if a student is struggling to just get their words on paper, right? They're just staring at a blank screen. Well, why not brainstorm? That might work better for them to just be able to do it visually. Onenote is a good one. Inspiration has not only desktop versions, but also iOS. I use the iOS app for that. And so the idea here is you can do it visually as a diagram, or you can tap one option and it switches to an outline. So that's a good strategy for writing, right? Is to begin with an outline so that you can see how the ideas are going to flow, where the gaps are, how things are organized. I would say begin with that, sort of that planning step. Don't skip over that step.
Right.
And then use things like the text-to-speech and the speech-to-text as supports. And the other thing with UDL that we always kind of stress is, what's the goal? So if the goal is to get at your understanding of a concept, let's say we're doing, the causes of World War I. So if that's the goal, I want to know if you understand what led to World War I, then how you express that understanding, to me, doesn't really matter. So if you want to use text, speech to text to type it, that's fine, as long as you show your understanding in that way. If you want to do a video or record a podcast or do a sketch note, if that works for you, then that's fine, because that, again, it's keeping in mind what the goal was.
Right.
Now, if we're working on the mechanics of writing, then that's a different goal.
Right.
And there we can provide some additional scaffolds. So always being clear on the goal is important when we talk about UDL. And
so I have a question. I got into a conversation the other day with, a teacher kind of really focusing on like typing. We really have to, typing is really important. The kids have to learn how to type. And I pushed back a little bit and I said, why? Because I had recently been with some folks, my friends who work at Apple and in their education department. And, they were saying, kids don't type with a QWERTY keyboard the way we do. They text with their thumbs and their fingers. And so I'm thinking about typing and just about UDL. And in your opinion, what is typing something that is still critical? I mean, it's still an ISTE standard the last time I checked. And so I think in some capacity, typing is good, but to what end, I guess, is what I'm asking. What's your opinion on that?
Well, it's like anything. We can overemphasize something. So I think if you're really, really focusing on typing, I think your attention is sort of misdirected. But to completely ignore it, I think is also a mistake.
Sure.
And I'll tell you why. I am not going to thumb type my dissertation. If I try to do that, I would probably go, a little bit.
What about speech to text?
Yeah, but again, that really works well when it's a short burst.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
it's a Twitter post, it's a Facebook status. So for those things, it works well. And again, maybe I'm reflecting my age here, but I will tell you that one of the best skills that I ever picked up in school that has stayed with me throughout my life, and it's still a really powerful skill, is typing.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the few things when I first came to the United States, I didn't speak the language or anything. It's one of the few classes in school where it didn't really matter that I spoke the language. It was just practice. You looked at the thing on the page and then you typed it on the keyboard. One of those old keyboards too,
right.
The ones that you crank the thing and it goes.
It was a typewriter. You had a typewriter.
That was me too.
Yeah. So I get what people are saying. Like people are now sketchnoting.
Right.
They're using speech to text. So that shouldn't be where all of our attention goes. But I do think it's a valuable skill. Again, when you're working on something like a dissertation, yes, you can use speech to text, but
for a novel, it'd be rough. I keep thinking that it would be nice to have. I mean, I've thought about this for years. Is to redesign the keyboard, but have it more of a one-handed keyboard and your mouse in your other hand, and have it be able to make more like a shorthand type of a stenographer's keyboard, where you can have shortcuts. Like if you press these two here, or these three buttons, you'll have shortcuts for words, not just letters, right? And then, because typically that's how I work. I have one hand on the mouse and one hand on the keyboard, and even if I'm having to reach over, that's more of how I work. And I think, why are we still using a keyboard that was designed with the actual typewriter keys? They purposely placed the letters in difficult areas so you couldn't type too quickly.
Right. Well, and so common letters wouldn't hit each other and get stuck. Yeah,
right.
That's.
And so why are we still using this antiquated keyboard? It just drives me crazy.
That's funny you say that, because that is exactly what my friend from Apple was saying, was like, why are we using this kind of antiquated model when everything's digital now? Like, I can tell you, Luis, that my two daughters, who are 18 and 21 respectively, have said that the best skill that they learned was typing, because that is now not a concern as they're in college and late high school, right. Is that they can knock something out, whereas other students are getting very stressed that this has to be turned in, and who's going to type it and how are they going to get it done. So I agree with you on that level, but I'm really torn as to like, what age do we start teaching typing, and how, and like, is it a grade, and or does it really matter that their fingers are on the right space? Because I know people who never learned how to type. Like, I think I'm one of them. I don't know that I have my fingers in the right places or that my fingers are doing the right thing, but I can type really fast and I can get it done. So, I feel like I can still get the work done without having, like, I don't know that I could pass type to learn right now.
Well, it's like almost with writing assignments, right? That should be one of the options.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with, saying you can write an essay, or you can do a podcast, or you can do a video. Like writing by itself as a form of showing your understanding, there's nothing wrong with it, except when it's the only option.
Right.
So then when it's the only option, then typing could become a barrier.
Right.
Right. So if you're not good at typing, are we getting your understanding? Going back to our example of, are we getting your understanding of what led to the World War I? What was the aftermath of World War I? Or are we getting a good measure of your typing speed and your typing accuracy? So again, being clear on the goal and providing options is the key. So if typing works for you, you've mastered it on your own, then great, write that essay. But if you have a really sweet voice and you want to highlight it for the rest of the class, and you have that nice baritone that you want to record a podcast, do that. Or if you're someday you want to be in media, you want to be in communications, and you're really good at doing videos. Well, I'm from a different generation, so I'm just saying my daughter is from a new generation, and so recently, I actually got her an Apple Pencil.
Okay.
Or stylus, because she was struggling to take notes in class. She was making a lot of noise. The
Right.
teacher didn't like that she was making a lot of noise typing. She was trying to take everything down verbatim too, and she was taking notes with the keyboard. And so I got her a nice stylus now that she can take notes in an app called GoodNote, and she can do them as a diagram. So now she's more focused on what the main ideas are, and it's a lot quieter. And so again, just different options, and it's working out quite well for her. So GoodNotes is one of my favorite apps for taking notes on the iPad, in case you're curious.
I have downloaded every single app that you've mentioned so far in the time that we've been talking.
So in the back of the book, so again, it starts with the accessibility options, because as I said, if you don't have that access right at the beginning, then that means that some people are going to be sort of shut out. But then the second half of the book is about, how do we leverage the fact that we have these powerful cameras, these powerful microphones built into our devices in order to really open up that creativity and that flexibility and how learners show their understanding and how they connect to the content, to each other, and even beyond the four walls of the classroom. So in the back of the book, there is a list of the top 10 apps.
Oh, perfect.
And so it actually starts with, we've mentioned a few of them, like Onenote, one of my favorites. Voice Dream Reader, that's a great app for listening to content with all kinds of different options. We mentioned Google Keep. Notability is a great note-taking app. You can record and take notes at the same time. So you can go back and review notes from a presentation or a lecture and so on. And then we go into sort of that creative space. So Adobe Spark Video. It's a great way to create narrative slideshows where you can bring in symbols, you can bring in images, short video clips, and so on. Apple's Clips.
Yep.
And what I love about Clips is that it's accessible. So it works with the accessibility features because, Apple designed it. So it works with VoiceOver. It works with switch control. It's a great app. And when I'm looking at these apps, I'm trying to pick something that's open-ended. So it's not saying you have to do things in this way. And so in something like Clips, you can bring in images, you can bring in audio clips. It already has some soundtracks that you can use, professional soundtracks, from Philharmonics that have been recorded by Apple. And so you're not spending all your time looking for those assets. It's more about expressing your ideas. So Clips is absolutely one of my all-time favorite apps, also because it's so simple.
Right. You just
so intuitive.
Click and go.
Yep. Then Explain Everything in iMovie. And those can be used for different purposes. iMovie is more of a full video editing application, whereas Explain Everything is a whiteboarding app. So you can explain your understanding by drawing, by recording your voice, by bringing in images, all of those things. And then the final two are more about how do you share your learning beyond the classroom and how do you share with others so that you can get feedback. Book Creator. So how do you build a portfolio, right? Where you can share all the videos you've created over the year, all of the images you've taken of your projects and so on in one place. So Book Creator is really powerful for doing that. And it now has a Google app as well.
Wow. Okay.
Nice.
And it was in Chrome. It's in Chrome and it's in iOS. So it hit the trifecta. That's great.
Yep. And people may not know this, but there's some accessibility options inside of Book Creator. So whenever you add an image to your books, you can add an accessibility description.
Oh,
very
fantastic.
nice.
So I may have had something to do with that.
Yeah, good job.
Bugging, nagging.
Right.
So again,
That's great.
Good for you.
But once it's published, it would work in a screen, like the screen reader for Book Creator, right? Yeah. So that makes sense that it would have that.
The screen reader or just text to speech. So it doesn't have to be that you're blind. It may be that you just need text to speech. And by the way, Book Creator has its own built-in text to speech.
Okay, cool.
So you don't even have to turn anything. You just tap the play button.
That's great.
And it reads the text inside of the app. So it's called Read to Me.
Oh, easy.
So it's leveraging the built-in text-to-speech, but with its own controls within the app. So it works great for younger learners who may not know how to use, speak selection and speak screen and those other options. you can just tap a play button and you can listen to the content read out loud. And then when you're done, you're exporting to an industry standard format, EPUB, which you can share, with there are EPUB readers for all kinds of platforms out there. So if you're building a portfolio and you want to track your understanding over time and how you've grown and developed as a learner, something like Book Creator is awesome. And then TouchCast.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So TouchCast allows you to create interactive videos where you can have a main video, which kind of provides the context, and then you can have hotspots within the video. And so you can tap on any of those hotspots, and it's kind of a branching functionality, where when you tap on the hotspot, it will open a separate video or graphic or
Nice
document, and you can view that document, video, etc. When you're done, you tap close, and it goes back to the main video.
That's awesome.
Did we do a touch? Because TouchCast Studio was one of our first episodes that we did, and I don't know that she was using that feature.
No.
Yeah, so I would encourage TouchCast and Book Creator are two of those features that have educator communities around them, ambassadors. And so those ambassadors perform two functions. One, they help people learn about these apps, right? So they go out and present at conferences and so on. But the other thing they do is come back and say, I would like to see this within the app because this would be helpful to my students. And so with both Book Creator and TouchCast, those educator communities have really sort of over time made the apps even better, right? And more robust. The other thing about TouchCast is the green screen feature. It's just one of my favorites. So I have a green screen set up here where, I can be on the moon if I want to, or underwater if I'm exploring, habitats, whatever it may be. All it takes is a green piece of material from your local craft store and some decent lighting, which you can purchase at Home Depot these days, and TouchCast on a tripod, and you're off to the races with your own green screen videos. Really powerful tool. And again, you're sharing that beyond just the classroom, right? You're putting it out there for a global audience who could then provide feedback and share it with each other.
I love it.
I know. So who is your book geared towards, the learner or the teacher or both?
All of the above.
All of the above. Excellent.
So I think, because I think it's important to empower learners too with their own toolkit that they can then, we do a lot for learners in K-12, but once they get to college, especially with learners who have disabilities, once they get to college, it's up to them to self-disclose and go get the help they need. And so a lot of times they don't know how to do that, but if we give them this toolkit that on day one, they have tools for taking notes, for staying organized, for, writing their assignments or listening to their ebooks and so on, then we've really given them a head start. So they're not falling behind, which could happen if they don't have that sort of awareness of these tools and the self-advocacy skills.
Absolutely.
But it's also for educators, again, as practitioners of UDL and creating a classroom where everybody has the opportunity to succeed, then, with the tools in this book and the framework, the UDL framework, then you're building that classroom where variability is not only incorporated into learning, but it's valued and it's celebrated. So, and the way we celebrate that is by allowing people to use different tools.
And just really saying, here's the rubric. Go. And I mean, I do that in higher education. I mean, we do that. I have some classes where it's like, in some cases I do need them to do things a certain way. But in other cases I'm like, well, you don't teach in a classroom, so how are you going to do this? So here's the rubric. And, I want you to go explore how you're going to show me that you've mastered these concepts based on the rubric. And I really do give everyone that option if they can't meet the requirements that we've kind of set forth.
And for some things, I want you to be creative, and for some, I don't. Like brain surgery.
Right. I don't want this to be wing. I don't want you to go out and explore a new technique on me. Right.
Brain surgery. We want you to follow
the protocols.
known procedure. But for other things, go all out,
Yeah.
explore different options.
Well,
So again, what's the goal?
Exactly. And I think that's really a space that we need to get teachers comfortable in, because that's an uncomfortable place typically for educators to be like, well, I want everyone must turn in a 3-page, double-spaced, typed essay. And I think you've given us as kind of administrators and educators a new lens of like, but what's your goal? Is your goal for them, is it typing the essay? Is it the formatting of the essay? Or is it demonstration of mastery of the content that they're putting in the essay? And if that's the goal, then is an essay required? And I think, that's something that we do need to think about a little bit more when we're working with teachers, and having them kind of get over that there's only one way to submit this to us.
Right. The other thing I would say about the book, in addition to the tools, at the end of each chapter, there's a learner vignette.
Great.
And so each of those learner vignettes is a person that I've worked with or that I know, where I've seen the impact of these tools. So they, in their own voice, speak to, what text-to-speech has done for a learner who would struggle with typing essays or being able to express their understanding. And what a learner who's blind, how they were able to use technology to get a college education and master the content that way. And, so there's a variety of different learners that at the end of each chapter kind of gives you an idea, what does it look like when we include everybody in learning, and everybody has that equal opportunity, that equitable opportunity, because I don't like the word equal. I think it's more about equity.
Yeah.
And then I use QR codes throughout.
Oh, great.
So the QR codes, again, the book says Personalizing Education with the iPad, but each chapter has a QR code that then takes you to the Google, the alternate universe, if you will. So if you're reading the book and you're like, what would that look like if I had a Chromebook or if I were using the Chrome web browser? Then just scan that QR code at the end of the chapter and it will show you.
Wow, you've thought of everything. You really touched on all of the bases. This is amazing.
I've already put the book in my cart.
I know.
On my Amazon cart.
So it's obviously a fantastic resource for everyone, and to allow them to be their own advocate, that's so important. What's the best way to get your book?
The best way is to go to cast.org. I'm sure you can put this in the show notes. Cast Publishing. If you do a search for Cast Publishing and then Learning on the Go, that should take you to the page for the book. And it is available in hard copy. It's a very, again, skinny book.
Yeah.
So it's very small, light. It's something you can throw on a backpack, and just have it in the classroom. It's not going to take up a lot of space or weigh you down. We skipped the theory and we went right for the skinny here. But it is within a framework, because I always feel like it's important to have a framework to serve as like that North Star. So you're not just sort of randomly applying different tools, but you have a sense for why you're applying those tools in a certain way. So UDL is the framework behind it. And then the tools kind of are used to implement or practice UDL in the classroom. So definitely check it out at Cast Publishing. Of course, you can go to my website and there's links from there as well. It's luisperezonline.com. The homepage, you'll see the links to this book and to my other book, Dive Into UDL from ISTE, which we have already mentioned in another episode.
Well, we appreciate everything, all the information. And
yeah, thank you so much for your time today. I think this has been a great, follow-up episode to the one that we've just done, and there's another one to come. Having our listeners kind of know that there's more out there from you guys, and what else we can do to really personalize education and meet the needs of all of our learners, not just ones that have been identified, but ones that maybe aren't or won't ever be, but yet continue to benefit from the work that you guys are doing over at CAST and the AIM Center. So thank you for your time today.
And again, Luis, if people want to get a hold of you, what are the best ways?
So the best ways, you can check out my website, luisperezonline.com. You can also find me on Twitter at IONAccess. That's EYE, like the body part, the I, ONAXS, short for access. So AX like xylophone, S like Sam. And then you can also find me on Instagram. LFP 1211. So I don't just talk about these tools, I actually use them myself as a person with a disability and as a photographer, videographer, person who does creative things. So on Instagram, you'll see some of my photography. It's one of my hobbies is doing iPhoneography or iPhone photography.
That's cool.
And it's a great account. I love following you on Instagram.
I do
Thank
too.
you.
You take some beautiful pictures.
It's all travel photography.
That's awesome.
Well, and because you're out and about. So where are you coming up next? Some places you're going to be?
Absolutely. So I'll be at the FETC conference here in Orlando, Florida. Also ATIA, that's an assistive technology conference. It's one of the largest gatherings of AT vendors and people that are interested in assistive technology, UDL, and those sort of related topics. Just keep an eye out. I'm out there. Even though I work for the National AIM Center, we attend a number of conferences where, we promote accessibility and access to education in a variety of different ways.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, Luis. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank you both for this great opportunity. Really enjoyed it.
You're always so informative, and I just like trying to write down as many notes as possible.
I'm downloading apps in the background of this whole podcast. I'm like, next. Well, thank you again, and we are looking forward to our next episode with you. And have a great evening.
Same to you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luis. Take care.
Bye. And
Bye-bye.
We're out.
Thanks for listening to the MyTech Toolbelt podcast. If you have enjoyed listening, please rate us on Apple Podcasts or send us some feedback on our website, mytechtoolbelt.com. We would love to hear from you. This will help us deliver the content that you want to hear. Thanks, and we're out.